Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you everything Pokemon, and today we're going to be looking at a Pyroar list. This is inspired by Charlie Powell's deck that he played at Manchester Regionals as he finished top seed with Pyroar on the day. So here we go, there's a few cards different from his based on the feedback that he gave after playing the deck. He said a couple of things did work, a couple of things didn't. So I've tinkered around with it a little bit, only 3 or 4 cards I imagine, but let's get into it. First of all, of course, we're playing 4 Litleos. We need to max out the Pyroar because it is a Pyroar focused deck. So for those unaware, Pyroar has the ability Intimidating Main, preventing all damage done to him by attacks from your opponent's basics. Very disruptive, very powerful. Bear in mind it is an ability, so Garbodor does shut it down. But other than that, they need to play either Garbodor or stage 1 or 2s to actually deal with Pyroar. Also, they can do status damage, but we have counters to all of these things in the deck, so I'll talk about that later. He has 110 HP, which is very nice, and his attack Scorching Fang for 2 colourless and a fire energy does 60, and if you discard a fire energy attached to Pyroar, it can do 30 more. This is great for knocking out EXs, and the math works out pretty nicely with the muscle bands that you'll be seeing in a second. The reason why we're only playing 3 of these is because we now have a new Pyroar to help us out. He follows suit and has the same 110 HP, weakness and retreat cost are both the same as well, but his ability, also very important and powerful, is that once per turn you may discard a fire attached to him and you do a catcher, basically. So this is great for targeting your opponent's bench Pokemon, bringing them up so that we can knock them out. Very important in Pyroar because we need to target down the things that are going to do damage to us before they actually do damage to us. So this is a great way of picking off your opponent's Pokemon before they can deal with this Pyroar that we have here. Also supporting, we have 2 Seismitoad EXs in the deck. Quaking Punch is a fantastic early game attack. It slows down your opponent's setup early on, and very notably it stops Trubbishes getting tools on them early on. So basically we want to, if we know we're playing against a Garbodor matchup, we need to be Quaking Punching to prevent Trubbishes getting tools on, so that when we're ready we can capture up the Trubbishes before they become into Garbodors, so that Pyroar stays healthy throughout the games in that matchup. So Seismitoad serving a lot of purposes. Having that 180 HP as a basic means that we can protect Litleos in the early game, keep them safer on the bench while we're hitting with Quaking Punches, slowing down our opponent's setup, limiting them to what they can do, as well as stopping Trubbishes from wrecking us and turning into Garbodors that shut off abilities. We're also running 2 Mewtwo EXs. X-Ball, very strong, especially against stage 1 and 2s because their HP is a little bit lower normally than trying to hit the 170s, 180 type things. So X-Ball, you can stack him up on the bench while you're chilling with a Pyroar sometimes to give you a bit of assurance if they have something that you can't deal with. X-Ball is just a great finishing move as well. We're also running 1 Jirachi EX. All about the Stellar Guidance ability here. You can search your deck for a supporter when you bench it, put it into the hand. We have a lot of different supporters. Jirachi is great for grabbing an out, really. So if we have 4 Ultra Ball and Jirachi, we just have more outs to find. Draw supporters in the early game to get us out of sticky hands, and we also have some one-offs and low counts of other supporters which aren't draw related and are for specific moments in a game that can really change the game. So Jirachi very strong in here. The A-Spec we've gone for is Computer Search. It can find DCEs, which no other card in the game can do right now. It can also find these specific supporters that I'll go into a bit later. Also just great for searching whatever you need at the time. One of the differences we have to Charlie's deck is that we are playing 3 Enhanced Hammers in here. I feel like Enhanced Hammer could be pretty strong because it can slow down opponents in the early game. Much like Seismitoad, we can get rid of DCEs and stuff like that. Strong energies if they're playing with Donphan, which is very important because Donphan can actually hit Pyroar without any issues. So these 3 Enhanced Hammer hold Donphan back a couple of turns, really, from stacking up way too big a damage with those spinning turns and stopping them getting a wreck on us as well. Also, if you think about it, other counters that opponents are likely to play, probably Raichu, maybe the occasional Beartic, and these usually run off DCEs. So having the Enhanced Hammers can set them back a turn that will give you the time to maybe find a Lysander or something like that to catch and kill them before they can deal with Pyroar. So Enhanced Hammer, I feel, is going to be important. Charlie played 3 jamming nets instead of these 3 hammers, and he said it wasn't all that useful. So that's what I've gone for that. I've also thrown in 1 Sacred Ash. Because we're only playing 3 Pyroar now, it just gives us a bit of security. Not all that important, really, if you play it right, but it can just save you in the odd pinch. I thought about having a trump card in here, but against decks like Genesect, where they can use Plasma Energies to keep getting catches on things, it could be a benefit to them. Also Donphan, if we've Enhanced Hammered loads of stuff away, it can be a benefit to them. And if they're playing Garbodor, again, it can benefit them. So the trump card sort of not really helping either player, so I went with Sacred Ash for this deck in particular. He had a Charizard and he said it didn't work too well, so I just threw in the Sacred Ash for an extra bit of security with these Pyroars, especially if this guy's get taken down, you can Sacred Ash him back in. We're playing 4 switches. Status is a problem for Pyroar, so we need to have these readily available to us to get out of the active position. Also, Seismitoad's really bulky. Mewtwo doesn't appreciate getting rid of DCEs that he could be using for attacks, so just use a switch instead. We've also maxed out the Ultra Ball here, trying to find these Litleos and Pyroars as quickly as we can to get our main strategy being pulled off. Also, having the 4 Ultra Ball and the 1 Jirachi gives us a lot of early game outs to supporters. We're playing 4 VS Seeker, something that this deck really gains from Phantom Forces. VS Seeker works nicely in here, maxing it out because we run a whole load of different supporters, and it just helps us grab the strong ones when we need them, and the N or the Juniper or whatever else we play in here that I'll show you in a second. You just spam the things you need at the right times. VS Seeker's super strong in this deck. Some of the supporters we're playing, the one of is a Pokemon Center Lady. Charlie decided to play a Cassius in his deck to shuffle all the cards back into his deck from one of his Pokemon. He said it didn't work all that well, so I've gone with Pokemon Center Lady. I feel like he had the Cassius in there to try and do a bit of healing, a bit of disruption. It can get rid of maybe an EX on the field if they're threatening Lysanders or something like that. But for me, I felt like Pokemon Center Lady's in here because of Seismitoad, really. You want to get a way to get rid of special conditions, and of course, under a Seismitoad lock, we can't use switches or stuff like that. And Seismitoad is a deck that really relies on the status to try and kill Pyroar. So having a Pokemon Center Lady and the VS Seekers as well can help us out there. Also, it's a nice bit of healing if your opponent's chipping away at a Pyroar, or even an EX early on in the game. We're then playing 4 N and 4 Juniper. These are pretty standard, really. N can be really strong as well. After a couple of Pyroar have gone down, you end them and they just don't have any outs, and you can just sit there with Pyroar forever. Next we have 3 Lysander, very important card in the deck. 3 of these and 4 VS Seeker means that we can target a whole bunch of stuff on your opponent's bench. Nothing is safe, really, against Pyroar. The main things we're going to be looking to take out are definitely Trubbishes and Garbodors, because as you can see, we don't play any startling Megaphones, I should say. So we need to use catches to knock them out. Also, we want to target stuff like Raichu and Donphans on the bench, so we definitely need to run a high count of Lysander and the 4 VS Seeker. So in those matchups, we can deal with the targets that we need to before they can actually deal with our Pyroars. We're also running 2 Blacksmith. This guy's pretty strong in here. You don't use him all that much, but he is pretty useful when you need to get a Pyroar out of nowhere after one of them's just died. You can go Blacksmith for 2 of your energy and then attach manually to get attacking straight away. Also, it can be pretty useful slapping it on this guy on a turn where you can just sit back really, and there's nothing you really want to target on the bench. You've got nothing better to do, so just use a blacksmith, get 2 energy on the Pyroar, so that we can catch her when we need to later on in different turns. The final card we have in here is for Muscle Band. Muscle Band, very, very important again. As you can see, Scorching Fang would do 90, which is just out of the range of a Garbodor's HP, which is 100. So we need that Muscle Band to just get us through the threshold. Also, in the mirror match, we can kill Pyroars with our own Pyroar, which is pretty entertaining. Also, Muscle Band makes a slightly better math with Scorching Fang. It means we don't have to discard the fire energy every single turn to get 2 shots on EXs, so it just helps out a lot in the deck. As you can see, it's been built very consistently, this deck. I really enjoy it. You max out all the important things. We have a lot of catching up and stuff like that. It's absolutely fantastic, really. The strategy of the deck is pretty basic. We're just saying to our opponent, come and deal with Pyroar. Let's see what you've actually got in your deck to handle this guy. And then we'll say, okay, well, we can capture it up and kill it before they deal with us. We can enhance hammer away, Donphans, energy and stuff like that. We can do a whole lot to this deck. And we've just had a disconnection, which is great. I'll just quickly mention that we have 4 DCE and 8 fire in the deck. Pretty just standard, rounding it off. We have enough energy in the deck, definitely. With these blacksmiths, we can recycle those, especially with VS Seeker. We're never going to run out of energy, and 12 means we have enough access to them early on. The DC is, of course, important for X-Ball and Seismitoad. But basically, we've lost connection. So that means I'll have to get a battle when the servers are back online. So I'll see you guys in just seconds for you, but probably a couple of hours for me. So here we are back on the game. We've got some connection and we're up against Cloffy, and he's going to flip some coins. He gets a tail, so we get to choose whether to go first or second. Obviously we're going to pick first, and it looks like we're up against some sort of metal variant. Pretty interesting. We have our good typing and we should be pretty good this game. We start off with Seismitoad and a nice amount of supporters. And we'll see what our opponent can come up with. He has 4 basics turn 1, that's pretty big. We don't really find much. I'm going to put an energy on the active, and probably an end's not the best option right now because of his lack of hand. He starts off with a Skarmory EX as well, that's pretty rare. Jousting off tools. So I'm going to just pass the turn here, because we'll see if our opponent actually has a supporter or not. We didn't get too much turn 1, but he may have a pretty dead hand as well, and I don't really want to end him too soon. So our opponent draws for the turn, but it's a metal onto the Dialga on the bench. And as suspected, our opponent doesn't have much, so just passes. I'm actually going to Juniper this turn, so that we can try and get some train lock going and try and lock this Skarmory in place for a couple of turns. Not too worried about discarding all these supporters. We run a lot of VS Seeker and stuff like that. We don't find any energy this turn, which is kind of painful. Not sure if I want to keep stuff with this Ultra Ball. I'm going to get rid of a Hammer and probably our second Seismitoad, so this is the only one we're going to use this game, so that we can find our first Litleo and start threatening with this guy and hand it over to our opponent. Our opponent finds a Bronzong and an N this turn as well. Maybe he was hesitant to use the N on us because we didn't use a supporter last turn. So that's how that worked out. He gets a Steel Shelter into play, not going to do anything really. And he's going to discard a Skarmory and a Metal with an Ultra Ball to find another Bronzong. He attaches a Metal manually and goes for a Metal Lynx. And leaves it to us. We can attach to the Seismitoad here if we wanted to. We also have the option to Blacksmith this turn, now that we have a VS Seeker. That could be our best course of action. Yeah, we're going to Ultra Ball away. Both fire energies. Find ourselves the Pyroar. As you can see, we've got a couple of Litleos prize, so we do have to be kind of careful here. But also, let's be aggressive. So we can find ourselves a Blacksmith. Use that real quick. Get those 2 discarded fires that we just put in there. Put them on the Pyroar. Also slap a double colourless into play. Didn't really need the Seismitoad, so we'll switch out of there and go for a Scorching Fang for 120. Could have gone for the knockout, but seeing as though his hand's kind of low, don't want to force it too soon. Especially because we don't have supporter. Don't want to overextend Pyroar. Our opponent puts down another Skarmory. And unless he has... Oh, he has a Lysander. Just to stall us out for a turn, hopefully for him. As we draw, we find a Sacred Ash. That's not going to be helpful right now. So we'll just pass it over. He's found himself a turn to draw. Both of us kind of struggling with our hands this turn. He just draw passes. And we find a Juniper, so we'll use that Sacred Ash now. Get those back in the deck, because why not? Not going to need the Mewtwo, because Pyroar will be doing much more damage anyway. We can bench another Litleo. And although we can't retreat, we can at least Trainer Lock our opponent with a Quaking Punch. Our opponent just has to pass. And we have some supporters in hand here. Definitely don't want to use that N. That would be terrible. Let's just go for the knockout. I think it's the safest route. I want to keep a couple of hammers for his DCEs, which we saw earlier in the game through his mulligans. So we'll go 2 prizes up here. Find some of those Litleos out of the discard, which is fantastic. At least one of them anyway. Because we can soon overpower our opponent with the Pyroar. He comes in, hits us for 60. Not a problem for us right now. Actually, we top deck a switch as well, which makes it all the more nice for us. We can get a DC onto the Litleo as well. And we could wipe all the energy off his board here. I feel like that is the right play right now. And we will do the extra damage, knocking out Dialga. And at the moment our opponent has no way of dealing with Pyroar unless he wants to do 60 with a Bronzong. And we are a couple of prizes from victory here. Our opponent just doesn't have enough for Pyroar right now, and it's pretty routine. If you come into an opponent like this who's not prepared for this matchup, they are going to struggle. Yeah. Garbodor, obviously one way of dealing with Pyroar. Also non-EX attackers, evolutions basically he needs. He has a fan club here. See if he actually ever played anything to deal with Pyroar. Some people just resign themselves to a matchup against Pyroar because of the lack of popularity of it at the moment due to Donphan. So they don't expect to run into Pyroar, and when they do, it turns out a bit like this, I guess. Our opponent's going to switch into the Skarmory, hoping to stall for the turn, and not going to work because of course we have the Lysander. We play a lot of them, and we are able to take the game here. Very routine game for us. Absolute destruction. Good game to the opponent. He just didn't have enough for us really. He could have stalled with the Aegislash, but again, so many Lysanders. He just couldn't handle the Pyroar.